Welcome, everybody. I'd like to give an opening prayer. Let us pray. Loving God, we come to you today in gratitude for the many gifts you've given us, an amazing heritage of faith from our ancestors here and through the generations. For this church, whose edifice inspires us for its beauty and the sacrifice it represents from those who came before us. We thank you for the excellent staff of this church who have given their careers to your service in this world. Father, we thank you for this country and the freedom we enjoy. Bless its leaders and all of the men and women who make sacrifices every day so that we might enjoy that freedom. We thank you for the amazing material blessings of this country and the natural resources of this beautiful earth. Father, we ask you for wisdom to be good stewards of the material blessings you've given us. Father, we thank you most of all for your saving love offered to us in grace through Jesus Christ. Give us the humility and the obedience to in turn offer Christ to the world. Thank you for empowering us to participate in your ongoing creation. Loving God, we know that to whom much is given, much is expected. As we dream together today about what our church facilities should be going forward, fill us with the excitement of a growing city whose people will need to know the good news of your love for the next generation and for every generation. Father, we thank you for the food we've received today. Bless it to the nourishment of our bodies and our souls to thy service. In Christ's name we pray.
I'm delighted that you're here and delighted that we're finally getting the chance to share with you some 18 months of work. So you're in for a real treat. One of the additional things I would like to share with you this morning is an introduction. As many of you know, we'll be getting a new associate pastor come the 1st of July. Matt Hampton, would you stand up? This is the new guy. This is Matt Hampton. We felt that this was important enough that Matt needed to be aware of exactly what we were doing, so we wanted him to be a part of this as well. I just want you to know that I am the most frustrated preacher on the planet this morning because way back in my study retreat in March, I planned for this sermon today, which was all about the power of a vision. And that was fine, except then I knew that this is what I wanted, what we're doing right now is what I wanted to talk about, but Mary Ann warned me I couldn't. You were to be the first ones to see this, and this was not to be announced everywhere. That will be done in August, but for now, the leaders of the church, you're the ones to see it and have the first input, so I'm delighted that you're here to be a part of this. I'd like to say something about the vision that brings us to this point and share with you kind of where I've been coming from. 45 years ago, in the middle of the night, my parents called me out of bed to their room where the TV was on. Early that evening, the lunar excursion module had landed on the moon. An American astronaut, Neil Armstrong, was about to open the hatch and descend to the lunar surface for the first time. After stepping onto the moon, he brought out an American flag, which he planted on the surface of the moon. That flag would stay even though the LEM with his passengers was going to leave. Visitors to the moon who follow him will find that flag, and they will know that an American astronauts showed them the way so that they too would know the way to reach the moon. 85 years ago, when this was nothing but a vacant lot on this site, the people of Church Street Methodist Church stood on this spot at the crossroads of government, business, and the university to plant this church. Across the generations, the church has stood and served in full view of the Knoxville community. Here we lift up Jesus Christ as Lord over everything that shapes this city. This is a better city because Church Street United Methodist Church is in ministry and in witness here. And now we are given the opportunity to reclaim this vision for the coming generations by building anew. We stake our commitment to witness and serve Jesus Christ at the crossroads of the city and the university. Everyone who passes this place we'll see that Church Street United Methodist Church stands at this spot, showing each one that Jesus Christ is still Lord over all. Our decision to prepare a master plan is already a statement that Church Street will be a beacon, living Christ, teaching Christ, and sharing Christ for the next 85 years. We dream of caring for our heritage, maintaining and enhancing this holy place. We are determined to make an easier path for those for whom distance and access are a challenge. We will make this entire campus work better so we can continue providing the meals for the nearby hungry, care for our elderly, and watch over our children. We dream of being, for the coming generations, a living, emerging, inclusive, faithful, and welcoming downtown church, reflecting on our history and building for the future. That's what this is all about. And I am delighted that you are here to be a part of it today. Thank you. You're on.
Thank you, Andy and Brian. I'm Mary Ann Gibson. I think you all know that, and I am the chair of this wonderful committee. And they give me a real challenge today. I'm a one-legged woman after knee surgery. I'm holding a mic, and I'm in the dark. But anyway, what an exciting day, and also an important day for you, the leadership, our church, our committee, our community, and our faith in planning for the future. We are presenting today a proposed draft of the master plan for your suggestions and to answer your questions. Then it will be taken to the congregation for their input and feedback before we move to develop the next steps in the proposed master plan. The draft of the master plan or guide you're about to see is a product that required 18 months and hours of hard work, dedication, and belief in our obedience to God that we need a guide to help plan for the future of Church Street and provide a map of how we can continue the responsibility that our Church Street leaders passed on to us in 1929 when they looked to the future and purchased the land, built this magnificent structure. As the senior pastor at that time wrote to the Board of Stewards, I guess that was trustees, after years of planning, we have the best church lot that man could pick. And we have plans, we believe, that will meet the approval of virtually every member of the church and a building that will stand for 100 or more years as a monument to the power and potency of Christ. I want to extend two big thank yous. First, to you, the leadership of the church, and in particular, the Board of Trustees and the Church Council, because you were willing and had the courage to grant us permission and to provide the resources to look beyond just the short-term needs of the church, but look at the long-term needs by providing a proposed master plan for the entire Church Street campus. Secondly, a big thank you and high praise to the Renewal and Renovation Committee for your hard work and long hours, and most of all, your dedication to make sure we stayed with the core concepts and the excellence that Church Streeters demand. I want to introduce them to you now, and I'd like them to stand when I call your name. Amy Cathy is on her way. You will see her soon. Wayne Davis is out of town. Reverend Andy Ferguson, where are you, Andy? You have to stand up. Gene Gallion and Bill Lyons are also out of town. Rick Norris. Kate Spencer. Connie Taylor. And Bill Terry. And thank you. They have met. The initial step for our committee was to identify and develop core goals that reflect the short-term and long-term needs for our church. They are renovate Parish Hall as well as the entire ground floor of the 1931 building, create accessible building entrances and restrooms, create unified parking and pedestrian entrances, reinforce our church Gothic structure, both on the interior and exterior of the church. After these first steps were completed, we needed an architectural partner that met the criteria that was passed on by church streeters in 1929 when John Russell Pope's design firm with local architect Charles Barber were selected as the architects for our 1930-31 building. To ensure we would have a building of the highest quality, and was stated by our church leaders of that time, a building more eye-catching than existed among the other fine Methodist churches in Knoxville. We didn't have too much pride, did it? Then it was our time to uphold that standard. We began a very thorough search and review before our partner was selected. I can assure you that as a committee, we could not be more pleased with our selection of one of the finest architectural firms in the United States. The firm that created our proposed draft of the master plan is Hartman Cox of Washington, D.C. Why Hartman Cox? We consider them to be the best and most qualified for our project. Their expertise is uniquely suited to Church Street's needs. They were involved in renovation and the addition to Duke Divinity School. They created the master plan for the Chapel of the Cross established in 1848 in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where Terry Eason is the lay building chairperson for that church. You will recall that Terry, architectural firm, worked with us when we had the fire in the parish hall and had damage upstairs. And he said he recommended Hartman Cox stating that Church Street is one of the most important church buildings in the South, and he works with churches all over. Where additions or changes to architecture significant structures have been necessary, Hartman Cox created imaginative designs of lasting quality and are responsive to the character of place. It is my pleasure to introduce you to two of Hartman Cox's partners, Mary Catherine Lanzalotta and Lee Becker. Among Mary Kay's many achievements, she has worked on the restoration of the Lincoln Memorial and several buildings by John Russell Pope, including the Jefferson Memorial and the House of the Temple and the West Building of the National Gallery of Art, all in Washington, D.C. She received her Bachelor's of Architecture from the University of Virginia and her Master of Architecture and Certificate in Historic Preservation from the University of Pennsylvania. Lee Becker has been responsible for overseeing the design and administration. I didn't give him enough pause, Lee. Oh. Hey, they're a great team. I apologize, I just ran that right into your wife's.
Well, I'm dealing with technical issues.
Okay. Lee Becker has been responsible for overseeing the design and administration of a broad range of project types, those including award-winning institutional, commercial office and mixed-use buildings, academic and residential buildings in addition to churches. Lee has been recognized for his design of law schools, libraries, business schools, and residential projects. These projects include the University of Michigan Law School, the University of Virginia, and the University of Maryland. That's only a very few things. He is also widely published. He received his Master's of Architect in the University of Maryland and is a fellow of the American Institute of Architects. Two of their colleagues that devoted many hours could not be here today or did not travel with them, but I do want to recognize them, and that's Danielle Lake and Michael Figueroa. In addition to all these accomplishments, I want you to know they're just good people. As they are coming forward now, and that's what you're here for, not to hear me or their introduction even, to present the proposed draft of the master plan. I have just one thing that I want to mention to you. In the interest of time, we're now, a little after 1, this is going to go on a while. We will not be taking comments or questions from the floor, but we very, very much want your input. So you have a piece of paper in your chair. I want you to take that, and as they talk, and if you have a question or a suggestion or a confusion, please write that down. And then after that, when they finish, every one of these committee members and the architects will be in the back. See the round tables? We will have a plan that you see on the screen, and we will be able to individually answer your questions, take your comment, and get your input. So thank you.
Well, thank you all very much for the opportunity to share with you our master plan today. Just Mary Ann mentioned it briefly, but in case you didn't catch it, in addition to being partners at Hartman Cox, Lee and I are also husband and wife. And so sometimes we slip and call each other dear. Don't be alarmed. We were talking earlier and mentioned we traveled together, and some curious looks came over. We've been married a long time at this point, so we're very, very excited, and we really appreciate the time that you all have spent with us. We've been here visiting several times. I do want to, on behalf of our team, I do want to thank you all for your generous hospitality. We appreciate the time that you took to speak with us, to answer our questions, to help guide us in understanding Church Street. It has been a remarkable experience for us along the way as well. So I wanted to start at the beginning. What is a master plan? A master plan is really a roadmap. We have watched how you've used your buildings. We've had a lot of conversations with you all over the last few months. And really, a master plan is the guide for the future. It is a long-term plan. It will be implemented probably in stages in a way to give you a guidance for the future. It's a living document. It is not something that should go on the shelf and you pull out every few years. It is to help guide, for example, your properties committee as you start to renovate different areas of the building. We want to make sure that as you touch the building, because a 100-year-old building needs a lot of care, you do things in a logical sequence and in a way that will enhance the future. And it's a planning process that tests the feasibility of various aspects. I will tell you that what we're going to share with you today is not where we started. Throughout the intervening few months, we would test ideas and discard them, or we would test several options and then combine two based on the feedback that we'd gotten to enhance the overall plan. So that's sort of the master planning process. As Mary Ann mentioned, there were some initial goals that you all came to us with, which was to renovate the space that we're in today, as well as the entire ground floor of this building. Creating accessible entrances was a very high priority, and accessible restrooms. You all are challenged in that respect. To look holistically at your site. You go from Poplar to Henley, from Maine really all the way down across hill and down the hill. You have a big site here, and we want to think holistically about it and step back and think long term as to what's the best use of your property, not just now, but going forward in the future so that you can plan for those uses. We also wanted to reinforce the church's Gothic architecture, both interior and exterior. Your nave space upstairs is spectacular. When Terry said it's one of the most important churches in the South, he is absolutely right. You have a unique, really wonderful building, and it's our honor really to help you plan for this future. Along the way, we added some goals as we learned and we listened to you all and the input we've gotten. So hospitality and fellowship became a real priority, to create welcoming and inviting entrances that welcomed not only your congregation, but those coming to visit you. You all do a remarkable job hosting the soup kitchen every week, and you invite a lot of people from the community into this building, and they wanted to be welcoming, inviting entrances. We also looked at what we mean by accessible route is universal accessibility. Everyone should be able to get anywhere in the building at any time. Whether it's coming in the doors, whether it's getting to the third floor and the choir area, whether it's getting to the chancel. We really looked holistically at accessibility throughout this building. We also heard that it was very important to create a covered drop-off at a main entrance for those inclement days. We arrived here yesterday just before the thunderstorm. And if that had been a Sunday morning, I can only imagine the challenges that you all would have had getting into the building. We also want to enhance the pedestrian and bicycle access to the building. As you know well, Knoxville's growing. You're creating more residential units in your downtown. Buildings are being converted, and so the opportunity exists for lots of people to walk in the future to your church. And we want to make sure that the entrances that the pedestrians will use will also be welcoming and inviting. And then to provide convenient, accessible storage that's nearby to support the parish hall. We just got to witness the conversion and movement of all those tables. And where did they move? They moved from the back over to the side. And we are lined here on either side at the moment with storage. And one of the goals was to find a better place that is more aesthetically pleasing, more than storing immediately adjacent to your common space. And so those were all things that we did as part of this plan. So as I mentioned, we were here visiting. We had opportunities to see your building in action, from luncheons, the choir, back down here, classrooms. You use your building well, a lot, and heavy. I think anytime we've been here, Sunday mornings from bright and early on through late evening, this property is used well. And when you have Sunday school, you have challenges because there are some Sunday school classrooms that are in spaces that aren't accessible, and that's making it challenging for some of your members to get to those classroom spaces. Additionally, this is on a hill, as you know, and there is no real level spot to get in and out of this building. At most of your entrances, you have steps, either right outside or just as you come in. On this level, to get from the parish hall level over to the church administration level, you literally have to go outside the building to come back in if you are limited in your mobility. So those were all things that we identified as needs that we're attempting to address as part of the master plan. You also have some interesting, I call them appurtenances, others call them unattractive aspects of the site. The mechanical equipment, your dumpsters and transformers, and these lovely transmission lines that run through former Broadway are all things we need to address and be thoughtful of as we're planning for the future. You also have used this building so well, some of your finishes, the floor finishes, as different building systems, mechanical systems have been integrated, you can see all the layers in your ceilings as you've gone from, as you've changed from probably copper to fiber optic cabling, as you've gone from radiators to fan coil units, you get to see all the pipes. I mean, it's a wonderful expression of mechanical engineering, but that may not be what you want to express as you share your building. There were also some areas that we found interesting. We were here one Sunday morning and it was raining, and the choir literally had to go outside to come back in across the courtyard, or they had to come all the way down here and go back up. So, and if you have limited mobility, getting all the way down to the parish hall to go back up is also a challenge. So we tried to be thoughtful and observe all of these different challenges. As many of you know, there's about a 41-inch change from your nave floor up to the altar level for the communion rail. All of those are challenges as well. One of the things we noticed in your breezeway, which I think the Properties Committee is addressing, is there was some water that when it freezes, it creates access issues as well. Just a bit of note, you have a lot of parking. You have actually what zoning requires you to have in terms of parking. It's in total number of parking spaces on your site. You have a number of different lots, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to share with you the nomenclature we chose to identify your various lots. So when we start talking about specific ones, you know what we're talking about. So we've identified what actually was residential when you were starting this building. The Main Avenue lot, the Magnolia lot, then you have the Upper Hill Avenue and the Lower Hill Avenue, and then the Church Life lot. We've also, for our purposes, identified the buildings as the Church Life Center, the Education Building, and the 1931 building. And if we refer to the south wing, we're really talking about sort of the administration area and some classrooms versus the nave and the parish hall. We've also color-coded. You have very little level land for parking. You've observed this, I take it. Your most level lot, as you probably know, is right here at the top edge of Hill Street, but that means you've got to cross the street in order to come into the building. The next best is the Magnolia lot, but there is a real challenge coming out of the Magnolia lot up to the breezeway. That is very steep in there and very challenging. The Main Street and the Church Life Center are in the 8 to 12%. That is, according to the Americans with Disabilities, not accessible. It is too steep for a chair user to be able to navigate. And then when you get down to the Hill Avenue, it's this precipice and you just go right off the edge. So that's a little bit of orientation. I'm probably showing you photos that you see all the time when you're visiting. So this is the Hill Avenue side. We've got that sort of precipice dropping down. This is the most level area, and then it gets progressively steep. And walking up that hill for people who are ambulatory is still very challenging on Sunday mornings.
Right, we met with the city engineer, and he walked around the site with us and looked at parking, and while we said that you meet your requirement for parking by numbers, he pointed out that many of the parking spaces technically wouldn't count because they're so steep. I think the steepest zoning allows parking, which is very steep, is 10%. And so we have much of the parking on these lots, much more.
Thank you. Just an aerial view of the site for those of you who have not flown over as a bird. So right now, Lee mentioned we met with the city engineer. We also met with the downtown development overlay. We also met with Knox Planning. So we have been exploring different options to understand what the opportunities were. Currently, your whole site is zoned R3, residential. And that requires that there would be certain setbacks for any future development that relate to side yards and backyards and front yards. You would have to follow the guidelines for any residential development. Long term, the city has identified your Hill Avenue site for medium to high density residential. They anticipate, not necessarily what you anticipate doing, but they anticipate that long term that will become a higher density residential, not dissimilar to these other areas. One of the suggestions that has been put forward in the master plan is that you consider approaching the city about some rezoning. That you would retain the Hill Avenue side as the residential. It gives you some future flexibility in terms of potential development because of this steep slope down here. But that you would consider rezoning the north side of Hill Street as commercial. This would, if you do this sooner than later, this would give you flexibility as you develop your master plan and build it out. The side yard, backyard, rear yard setbacks would almost go away. And so it gives you more flexibility in your development. There is also some potential that the utilities, seeing this site as commercial as opposed to residential, there may be some better discounts you could get on utilities. So there are a couple of reasons that we think it's probably wise to explore this a little bit farther. Everything around you, except for this residential here, is all commercially zoned. And it's unlikely that you would have much effort or pushback from the city to do that. And we think it gives you a lot of future flexibility. So that is one of the things. So this diagram is of the first floor of the 1931 building. There are 7 different floor levels in this first floor. These are the primary entrances that you can come in, but out of these 7 entrances, only 1 is accessible. And this is where I said you have to go from here in the parish hall. So this is the parish hall. This is the kitchen and the corridor 118, and then the administration area. You literally have to go outside to come back in. If you want to use the restrooms, if you're women and you want to use the restrooms, if you want to go from the parish hall up to the administration area. So those are real challenges. And even this Hill Avenue side, if you come in to the administration area and you want to go down to the parish hall, that's a big issue.
Yeah, the other thing we discovered, of course, is that there's no accessible connection to the 3rd floor. So we'll show you in the next slide some suggestions. But this end of the building of the south wing is a cul-de-sac. And so there's a stair here that I don't think is used very often, but it really does keep this from connecting across. And every entrance, I think with the exception of this one and this one, has steps somewhere. One of the things we figured out very quickly is that this yellow space at elevation 915 is virtually the same level as the Magnolia parking lot. But to get from the Magnolia parking lot, here you come up at 10% grade, about 3 feet, give or take a few inches, and then back down steps. So it gets you in a non-accessible way to a non-accessible. And our observations were that most people come to church on Sunday morning this way, go up the steps and into the transept. And we were talking about various schemes with one of our partners, and he said, wouldn't it be lovely if you could somehow reintroduce the narthex as the primary entry? So that was always sort of lurking in the back of my mind as we did this. So you've got the narthex above, which has a long but technically accessible ADA ramp at 8.33%, which gets you from Hill Avenue. And then you have this being the elevator that you enter from the outside and the inside that comes through room 118. Those are serious challenges. And then, of course, the steps here and the choir that goes across the courtyard through the narthex set up for the procession on Sunday morning.
And we'll come back to that notion of entry sequence. I mean, Pope and Barbara McMurray did a wonderful job. You come into the compression of the narthex, and then you enter the nave, and you have that wonderful expansion and the glorious procession. And I think that is something that right now, those that come straight from the parking lot up that, in this door and up the stairs, lose that sense of arrival. And I think that's an important thing that we would like to see as part of the master plan be reestablished. We are recommending that you consider adding an addition essentially right through these windows here that would be coming right off the Magnolia lot, that would create a welcome commons, that as visitors came into the building, they would be welcomed and greeted in the common space. That would also have an elevator that would go up to the nave level. It would also go down to a below grade level that would also be parking, and that would have your covered parking and drop off. There would also be a new stair here so that people wouldn't have to come up this tight little stair. So people would come in and then either up these stairs or use this elevator or up these stairs to the narthex and then enter the building as was originally intended. We're also proposing lots of accessible restrooms right here that would support the parish hall activities, but also provide restrooms convenient to the nave space itself. Below that, because we have this nice big elevator that will accommodate a casket, that would also accommodate large tables and chairs that could go down one level to a storage space that would be directly under the bathrooms. So we are trying to use this addition to cover a lot of the goals of the proposed plan. So we've dealt with an accessible entrance. We have an elevator that gets you up and down. We're adding additional restrooms. We're adding storage. The other recommendation, as Lee mentioned a minute ago, we would like to see the stairs that are currently just outside be converted to a passageway on this level and one level up, so that you can really circulate all the way around both the first floor and the second floor. And then we would add an elevator here that would get people all the way up to the third floor. And that would support the choir and people visiting that level, but it would also allow, when the choir travels, you don't travel light. You move a lot of equipment, and right now it all has to be carried down the stairs, and so that elevator, in addition to supporting accessibility, which would support the choir activities moving around as well. So this is our proposed first floor plan. So what does this addition look like? This gets back to the goal of having it be compatible and sympathetic to the original building. So here is your current view of the building from Henley, and this is our proposed. So this is our new addition, and this is the enclosed loggia that would carry all the way across. This would be your new stair. Your elevator would be immediately behind, so that people would be able to come up the stairs and in, or up the elevator. There would be still that walkway for the pedestrian, and this would actually also come down to the parking lot as well to provide access.
Additionally, where you come and walk in sort of the areaway to go up the existing steps, there would be a door there. And the elevator that serves the third floor is just behind this corner. It's actually the only place in the building that we could find where you could fit a small elevator. And it's the smallest ADA accessible elevator that one can do. So right now the choir is back here. And there are some classrooms that you meander back and around through to get to. So you can come from a service directly across to this space and go to classrooms on all levels at the front of the building. And so the other thought was just behind this pair of doors here in the loggia, which would be primarily glazed with the tracery-like windows around, is an elevator that, one, provides a lot of capacity to bring people in from the parking, but also would help facilitate funerals, which would take caskets right out as well. And furniture from this level down to space below. on the bottom level, by the lower parking area. We work for storage.
From the west, this is the current view if you were a bird and flying, hovering above. So here's that delightful transmission tower. And presently you can come in really at this level and come down, and that is currently the way a lot of the folks coming for Soup Kitchen enter through that door. So what the proposal would be then is from the parking level, this would invite visitors to come right in. They would be coming through essentially these two windows into the parish hall. There would be a gracious, at this level, no more stairs. Everybody could come in at this level, and a gracious, welcoming common space just beyond in this addition. So this is our elevator, our stair, the connection back. And this is our proposed parking so that we would be able to double the capacity essentially of the Magnolia lot, and this whole level below, which would be connected via the elevator and the stair, would all be covered parking and drop off and the ability to bring people in.
So I don't think we have a plan at the lower level, but there would be a similar space to the commons below, which provides covered parking and covered walking from parking below, along with the storage. It also, below the stage and that elevated part of the building is a lot of mechanical space that's full of stuff and highly inaccessible. It would provide access to that at the base of the transept down below grade.
So there's covered parking below with a drop-off there, and then there's also a drop-off here. People could circulate through and then go find other parking, or there would be parking at this level as well. And it essentially, as I said, doubles the capacity of the Magnolia lot. Just a closer-up view coming in. The other thing we would do is we would add a door, essentially where the Coke machine is now, another pair of doors out. So we would be able to isolate the parish hall with its own restrooms and from a security standpoint, and then you would be able to lock off the rest of the building so that it provides an isolated area for outside groups to be able to come in and utilize your space as well. Without going into the church, it would contain outside groups to this area. So if you just came through those doors, this is a view. Now, I will say design is an iterative process. We are at the planning stages. When we get to the actual project stage, which is another step forward, we will be revisiting all of the images that we're sharing with you and all the finishes again. But these are just some evocative concepts to get you thinking about how you could utilize this space in the master plan. So you have just come through the doors. This is a view through those windows, would be doors into the parish hall, and then this would be your sort of hospitality and fellowship greeting space, and then people would be able to either take the elevator, which is right here, or the stair immediately to the left to go up to the narthex level and then enter the church in that procession.
So one of the comments is all of your current entrances, except perhaps the front, sort of come in and meander around. There's really no gathering spot. And we heard that loud and clear, so that this provides a great sort of gathering space and anteroom both to come into the church and the parish hall. And if you back up one slide, in a lot of the discussions with the committee, they said, this would be a great place to serve coffee. So this image, the beauty of SketchUp is you can put a person anywhere and look at it once you've built a 3D model. And so it's a little cartoony because it's a SketchUp model. But so this is a counter that you could use to set up where you could actually do something else and bring a cart. Where people would come in, you could have coffee, after an event here or something like that.
And this is a view looking back to the drop-off at this level. Again, doors to the parish hall are here and then stairs going up. We also looked at other entrances to your building. I'm sorry, we'll move into the parish hall next. So we're coming through these doors now into the parish hall. We spent a lot of time talking about this space and how to make this space work better for everyone. So here is the view coming through those new doors. And in the interest of respecting the architecture, we're proposing that there would be, these are the doors back to the commons. We're proposing there would be sort of a wainscot just under, or a wood wall all the way around. It would start to evoke the woodwork that you have upstairs in the nave and tie the two spaces visually back together. A lot of opportunities, just like this morning, people move from the nave space down here or vice versa, going back and forth. And to have these two spaces visually look more like one another, we think strengthens the overall understanding of the space. Now, we know you have a lot of different people that use this, and the materials need to be durable. And so that's why we're looking at good, solid, durable materials. This is a setup that could have been the luncheon today. Then we looked at this. I think the committee got blurry-eyed when we showed them all the different options. This is a setup that you might use in this room where we propose to put 2 screens instead of 1 so that you're not so far away from the screen, and turn it 90 degrees so that the screens are on that side with the seating and the speaker in the middle. We're proposing to really reinforce the architecture of this space by taking advantage of the existing sort of beamed and coffered ceiling, but enhancing it in a wood-like way so that it adds warmth to the space. We're also proposing that we would change out the fluorescents and add some ambiance with the chandeliers, and don't get caught up in what the exact chandelier is. We'll have lots of time to think about that aspect. But the idea is that it really starts to become a similar, not quite as fancy as your nave, not quite to that level, but it ties the two spaces back together in a way that's very cohesive. This is sort of a longer setup. I know this morning you had a speaker in here for Sunday school and you had a couple hundred seats, so this would be that sort of orientation. Although we're recommending you eliminate the stage, use that for storage. Lots of different groups use this. That would be a great vantage point for the service circle so that the ladies are not traipsing up to the stage and trying to carry down all the materials. It's a great opportunity for soup kitchen not to have to use, again, the stage area. Based on the conversations we've had, you haven't used the stage for much more than storage in a long time. And so if it's going to be storage, let's make it functional storage and not have it be 3 feet off the ground. And so that's what we're proposing here, is behind this area, which is essentially where the stage is, would all be storage to support the activities of the parish hall.
Just for orientation, the door is the child's room. And the door into the stage, so we can keep this wall clean and have it be a backdrop for setting up for events, is to have the door around the side, so it's essentially where the door is, comes in the side around that last column.
So now I'm going to move back outside, I think, and talk about 2 other entrances into the building. The first one is coming off of Hill Avenue. Currently, visitors that come to the church office come through the door here, if they find it. And then they come down a corridor and they really don't have any orientation as to where they're going. And if they're lucky, they turn to the right and walk straight ahead into the church offices. But one of the things that we heard loud and clear is that wouldn't it be wonderful to have the church offices open to the entrance so that they can greet visitors and help with orientation as people come to the site. The other thing we've talked about is how steep this area is, that you're level and then you have to go up to come back down, either into the K Center or the Church Life Center or into the parish hall. So we're going to propose something here that starts to level out that space.
Interestingly enough, this floor is about only 1 foot of difference between the floor and the center over here. And so as you come up a good 3.5 feet to go back down to that and up to that. And so there was a suggestion on the committee that we look at the feasibility. And again, this is something that can be done or not done. But taking this piece out and lowering this, it means you wouldn't necessarily connect across, but you come into the building on level, you can go to that elevator, you can go to this elevator, various things like that.
So here, what we're proposing to do is that we would enclose the breezeway here and level this out so that you would basically come in level from Magnolia. There would be a slight slope up now, or you would come in level to the parish hall. And we'll show you a view of that in just a minute. On the Hill Avenue side, we're proposing that we add a small addition here to create a vestibule and then enclose the space between the breezeway so that visitors and the congregation can come through essentially what's a bay window now, and directly into the administration office, and there would be someone there to greet you as you came into the building. It would be a much more inviting area. And then we were also looking at, presently there's a very small women's restroom there. We would reorganize the support space and the restroom to make this a much more inviting experience. I failed to mention the child's room would stay the child's room. It could still be used for the purposes it is now, small meetings, Sunday school. The parlor would also, if we can solve the leak problem, also be able to be used for meetings and gatherings in a way that it hasn't been used recently as much. So on the Hill Avenue side, this is the current view with your awning that comes in. And this slopes down. Actually, there's a stair here, and then it slopes down. We're proposing that you add a vestibule here and a slightly different awning. This would actually have steps, but we would create a sidewalk essentially behind that would create the accessible entrance into this area as well. And a slightly different view showing that the sidewalk is actually sloping downhill, and so this would allow visitors to come in almost level from the sidewalk and enter the building that way, and then come into the new office area. On the from the former Broadway, this is where we would essentially be flattening out that slope here, adding some new doors and enclosing the breezeway. We would leave the planters on either side, but this would be almost level then coming off the Magnolia lot and level getting into either the church life or coming over to the 31 building.
So just to note that these walls, of course, don't exist. The grade right now is about here. And so we put these sort of low planter walls in here so that we could drop the grade. This elevation is essentially the same as it was, except that we fill it in with doors and windows about at the level.
This is where you have mechanical equipment presently, and we've been talking with the mechanical engineers who designed your new chiller system, and we think there's enough capacity in your chiller system to be able to ultimately eliminate the mechanical equipment here. We also spoke with the utility, and they would, for a very small, well, very large fee, be happy to relocate the power around your building instead of running through the middle of your buildings. That's an expense that you all would have to give some real thought to. It is possible, but it's not a small cost, and that would have to be something. Yes, it would not take the one away out at where Broadway and Main intersect. It would just eliminate this one and the wires going across the building as well. It is possible, whether it's something that you all would like to pursue. That's a slightly different combination. Moving into, we've talked a lot about this part of the building, but we were charged with looking at the entire 31 It started out as just the 31 first floor plan, but of course we couldn't leave well enough alone and we looked at the whole building. And so we're going to move into talking about what we've identified as the south wing. We've talked a little bit about the entrances, but we're going to move on to talk about some other life safety issues. Currently, you have classrooms on all 3 levels. You have them on the 3rd floor, 2nd floor, and 1st floor. What we've talked about, the sort of reorganization of the entry, but what we've also proposed as part of this master plan is potentially co-locating all of the clergy, gathering the clergy from all the different parts of the building and co-locating them on the 3rd floor where you currently have some classrooms. There would be the accessible elevator that would bring everyone up, so they would be very accessible. But this gives us an opportunity to move what's considered assembly space off of the 3rd floor. You don't really have, this presently is a dead-end corridor up there with the classrooms, and you have a lot of people. By changing that to an office use as opposed to a classroom use, we would be reducing the number of people on the 3rd floor, and that would be better from a life safety standpoint. And so what we're proposing is this becomes a clergy suite. We would reconfigure the 2nd floor with classrooms, increase the number of restrooms and make them accessible in both of these locations, move classrooms around. But what that also starts to do is by pulling both the church staff and the clergy out of their sort of far-flung areas and co-locating them, it actually frees up some spaces that could be converted to classrooms where they're accessible. So the Sunday school class that currently meets in the basement of the education building, some of those members are getting older, they're uncomfortable going down those stairs. Classrooms like that could be relocated to accessible locations by moving some of the staff and the clergy around. We would also encourage you to think about taking the history room, moving the archives adjacent to it, so it frees up yet another classroom space as well. And then we would also be looking at trying to create 2 classrooms in the choir area that could be used for bell practice or some of your music programs.
Talk a little bit about the connection across.
Oh,
Here.
thank you. So this would be, and this is one of, think of 6 or 8 options that we studied of how to reconfigure this area, and we'll come back to that in a minute. Lee's reminding me, we talked earlier about the loggia connection from the ground and the 1st floor, and so for the choir that's up here practicing, they could come down the stairs or down the elevator, straight across and into the narthex. And then back for Sunday school from the narthex. So you would reverse that processional sequence. You'd come from the narthex either across to classroom spaces here at the 2nd floor or come down to the lower level. So it really transforms the circulation.
Right, and even continuing from the transept across, so you now have a loop that allows people to leave in both directions and come back across. Essentially on both floors, because there's an elevator here, there's an elevator at the other end. So you have accessibility and a fairly direct connection, and a lot of it too will go by, depending which way you're heading, can go by this space and by the commons as well.
These are highlighting a couple of other areas we've touched on, the office space, the history room, the clergy suite, and then creating some classroom space or for use by the choir and others. We're proposing a small kitchenette be added up there for use by the clergy staff and the choir area as well. The other area that we focused in on is in the chancel, for the connection between the nave and the chancel. Currently, I mentioned earlier, it's about a 41-inch difference. We are strongly encouraging you all to consider adding a railing to the front stairs. We We've talked to a craftsman who produces amazing ironwork that would be on par with the ironwork you currently have in there, so it would enhance the ambiance of the space and be a contributing feature. So adding a railing here. We're also looking at the stairs that come off of the landing. These are the current stairs if you haven't had the opportunity to traverse them. They would be, we're suggesting they be replaced with a stair lift. So normally the stairs would be available for anyone to use on a daily basis, but if somebody does need to use a lift to get up to the chancel area, the stairs actually retract and the floor here will rise up and access the chancel area. So it's a way to improve accessibility in a very unobtrusive way. You'll still be able to close the door, and so for most people they won't know the stairs are there or the lift is there, but for those who need it, whether they be in the choir or otherwise, it would provide that accessibility to that chancel level. It does have some impact on the choir. We might have to reconfigure the pews slightly in order to get this in because this device is wider than those stairs, but we believe we can make it work and not impact the organ at all. Oh yes, Lee's reminding me that this is a raw, just from the factory view. We can clad it in wood, we can make it a much more attractive piece, we can paint it a different color, we can make it have the appropriate character, but this is just giving you an idea of that device that we recommend that you add to that area. So now I'm going to move back outside, and we were also charged with looking at the site holistically, and we've talked a little bit about future development possibilities and the rezoning, but we were also asked to look at the parking areas, and so we're going to look at each of these individually. You've sort of gotten a preview of our proposal for the Magnolia lot, but we'll talk about each of them individually. So this is your site today. As I mentioned, we looked back at some historic photos, and this was residential until fairly recently. I think it was the late 80s, mid to late 80s, when you built the Church Life Center. You really needed additional parking at that point, and those residences went away. And here is our proposal for the Magnolia lot. As we mentioned, it's a two-level lot, but basically this upper level is where it is currently. And you're carving into the hillside to create that lower level of parking. So that visitors could come in and park below and enter the building here, or they could drive up and drop off and then park in one of the other areas as well. So as we mentioned, we did talk to the city engineer, and he strongly recommended, right now you have one way in and one way out. He strongly recommended we add 3 lanes there to facilitate movement in and out. The majority of your parking is really in this area, and he felt that enhancing the ability to turn right out of the lot to go up to Henley or come back down, or to be able to turn in and not have if somebody wants to turn in and turn left, they don't want to have a queue coming out down Main Street. So he strongly encouraged 3 lanes here so that the middle lane could turn left or go straight and the right lane could turn in. We did explore adding a turn lane here on Poplar, but your utilities are big in this town, and there is an enormous cantilever traffic control device that looms over the intersection of Poplar and Main. And they explained to us the footing for that, the part that you don't see that's below ground, is huge. And that while the cost to actually create the turn lane on the surface was modest, to relocate the cantilevered arm for the traffic control device was significant. And so while we explored that, that's one of the ones that we took off the table as part of our exploration. We also, so this is the plan that shows the lower level parking. So you would be able to turn in and drop off here or park here and come in at that lower level to the elevator or the stairs. This would all be storage, and there would be a connection at this level to the basement of the church building. We also looked at, we were told to dream big, so we did. We also looked at what would happen if we put structured parking on your main street lot. Now, this might not be something you want to explore now. It might be something that requires a partner. But if you were to sell the development potential on Hill Avenue, you would need to be able to relocate that parking. And so this parking structure gives you that opportunity. Currently, you lease part of your Main Street lot already to University of Tennessee. If you had a partner who would be interested in helping you with the development of a structured parking area there, you would be able to lease more of the spots to Tennessee. And so that might also be able to be a generator. But this would be a structured parking deck, precast. It would have 4 levels. But one of the levels would also connect potentially through a tunnel back across here. So this would even be more covered parking. And we'll go to a rendering in just a second that will help to explain it. So this is the Magnolia area, and then this would be our proposal for structured parking should it be should there be interest. That would provide 4 levels of parking and the connection back as well.
So there are 2 things here. Presently, and we also looked at an alternative for surface parking on this lot, which did not add any more spaces than you had today. It just was a slightly better circulation and flow because it wasn't really subject to when the houses moved away, you develop more parking. But your parking presently comes all the way out to the edge. So we looked at numerous options on how to put a parking on this site to get it terraced so that you could still see the church as you come from beneath the tunnel. So this one is a very simple parking, has a 5% slope. You are probably familiar with continuously spiral parking and not that difficult to walk on. It would give you a lot of covered parking that you can then connect underneath directly to the church out of the weather. But it provides a greater setback and more green space along Main Street. I think you have the next. The photo on the left is where it says US 70 on it. It's gotten from either Bing Maps or Google Maps. And we tried to set perspective in our 3D model so that it was from virtually the same spot. And you can see this terrace parking, and we put trellises and green vines and such on the first level so that while it's 4 stories, you don't perceive it that way because it slopes with the hill, with the landscape.
And you
still, as you come out under the bridge, you see that. Now, again, this perspective is an interesting one because if you're over here in the street presently, you really don't see the church for the trees, but you can see it, and it's virtually the same perspective.
We also looked at opportunities on Hill Avenue. I think we studied 3 or 4 different structured parking schemes there. You do need to do something on Hill Avenue. The retaining wall is failing, and it has to be shored up in some way, shape, or form. But in order to not have you put a lot of money into something that you have the potential to develop in a different way down the road, we're recommending there that you either do a repair to the existing retaining wall, or if you want to add some additional structured terrace parking, there's some modest regrading that could happen with some earth berm walls that would give you more level parking, but it wouldn't put the enormous investment into structured parking there. So just one more time, this is a before view of the addition and an after view of the addition from the intersection of Henley and Main. So this shows our three-story addition here. We think it balances the south wing from Henley in a way that I think if Pope and McMurray had added on, they would have done it in this direction, because it definitely starts to counterbalance the original design. There are always recommendations that need to come out of these master plans. And so our recommendation is that to enhance hospitality and fellowship, you improve life safety and accessibility. And you do that in a variety of ways, as we've discussed this afternoon. First and foremost, we think constructing the structured parking on Magnolia and creating that three-story addition will really enhance the experience of everyone coming to Church Street. It will provide an inviting and welcoming entrance. It provides accessibility. It deals with your restrooms, your storage issues, your covered parking, and we think that that will provide an enormous benefit in the long term. We also recommend that you renovate the parish hall. There is a lot of opportunity here. You have great bones of this building to work with in the parish hall, and what we're proposing is really to enhance those in a way that, again, we think Pope would have done had he had the opportunity. And that we think you need to renovate your mechanical and electrical systems, all that stuff that nobody wants to see but needs. We're also recommending that you consider adding fire suppression, a sprinkler system. It provides an enormous amount of life safety, and it gives you flexibility in areas where we'll have some challenges meeting the current code. We will enhance the building by adding the fire protection. Everywhere but the nave. Everywhere but the nave. In terms of a building renovation, we recommend you consider renovating the Hill Avenue entrance and adding that vestibule, the additional canopy, and providing that open and inviting and welcoming office environment for the church staff. We also recommend that you improve life safety and circulation by enclosing the loggia on the nave level, but also providing that connection across at this level in order to create a better circulation around the building and add the elevator to the south wing to increase accessibility all the way up and down through the building. And that also by consolidating the clergy staff up in the third floor, that will bring the majority of the people down to the first and second levels where there's more access to get out. And that as you make those changes, you go ahead and renovate the mechanical and electrical systems in that area as well. From a site utilization standpoint, as I mentioned, as you build the three-story addition and the welcome, you add the parking. And if you can find a partner, and there is a desire to do so, and it's not, it can be independent of all of this other work, you consider finding a partner to help you build the Main Street structured parking, and then, as we mentioned, address the retaining wall on the Hill Avenue side. The next challenge will be figuring out what to do first. We've given you a lot of ideas. This is a roadmap. It is not something that all has to be implemented at one time. In fact, it shouldn't be implemented at one time. It needs to be done in a logical, methodical way, looking at your priorities, balancing those priorities with the other needs of the parish, and figuring out a way forward. But there are some things that should be done together so that you're not retracing your steps. So it makes sense, a lot of sense, to build the addition and the structured parking together. It makes sense to renovate the parish hall, if not concurrently with that, soon thereafter, because you're going to want to provide that connection back and forth. Enclosing the loggias, adding the loggia and closing it, making that connection, has a lot of benefit as well. And then the renovation of the south wing can happen sequentially over time as the resources are available. We have given you hopefully lots of food for thought today. And so we look forward to hearing your comments and questions. Thank you for your time today.